So, imagine you're a cop in Brooklyn. You get an anonymous tip about a body in someone's apartment. You've heard it all before, right? Probably nothing, but you show up anyway. You walk into this apartment, and there's a woman acting really weird when you try to open her fridge, like aggressively blocking you from it. The fridge is literally taped shut. You open it anyway, and staring back at you is a severed human head. But here's the thing that's going to mess you up. That head, it had been sitting in that fridge for almost 2 years. And the story of how it got there, it's somehow even worse than you're imagining right now. Stay with me. This is the story of Nicholas McGee, a 45-year-old man living in Flatbush, Brooklyn, who turned his apartment into something straight out of a horror movie. And I'm not exaggerating when I say this case has everything. Drugs, violence, a body hidden in plain sight for nearly 2 years, and a confession that happened over a cigarette in a Virginia jail. His name is Nicholas McGee. He lived with his wife, Heather Stines, in a third-floor apartment on Nostrand Avenue. And in March 2022, he did something so brutal, so calculated, that even hardened detectives were shaken by it. The victim? A 39-year-old man named Kawsheen Gelzer. Now, before we get into what happened, I need to set the scene for you. Because this isn't just about one moment of violence, this is about a toxic living situation that was always going to explode. Let's go back to the beginning. So Nicholas McGee and Heather Stines were living in this apartment in Flatbush. And look, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. These two had serious drug problems. We're talking heroin, crack, the whole deal. And like a lot of people struggling with addiction, they needed a steady supply. Enter Kawsheen Gelzer. Now, Kawsheen was a drug dealer. He'd been on the state sex offender registry since 2005 for molesting a 12-year-old boy. Something his family later disputed, but it's on record. And he was essentially homeless, couch surfing between different places. Here's where it gets messy. Kawsheen would crash on McGee and Stines' couch, but he wasn't paying rent with money. He was paying with drugs. And sometimes, get this, the arrangement included Heather performing sexual favors for him. Can you imagine? This toxic triangle of desperation, drugs, and degradation. It's like a powder keg just waiting for a spark. Neighbors later told reporters that everyone knew something deadly had happened in that apartment. They'd heard things, seen things, but nobody called it in. Not for almost 2 years. So what was the breaking point? What made Nicholas McGee snap? Here's where things get crazy. March 25th, 2022. Just a regular Friday night in Brooklyn, right? Wrong. That night, Kawsheen Gelzer did what he'd done plenty of times before. He asked Heather for oral sex, but this time, she said no. Kawsheen didn't take it well, but eventually he just crashed on the couch like usual, fell asleep face down. Now Nicholas comes home and sees Kawsheen passed out. He shakes him awake and demands drugs, but Kawsheen refuses. Maybe he was pissed about Heather rejecting him. Maybe he was just tired of this whole arrangement. We don't know. But Nicholas was furious. He storms out of the apartment, finds another dealer, gets high, and comes back home. And the whole time he's walking back, he's just stewing in this rage, feeling disrespected, feeling like Kawsheen was taking advantage of them. According to prosecutors, he told Heather, "I'm going to kill him, motherfucker." And here's the thing. Kawsheen was still asleep on that couch. He had no idea what was about to happen. Remember this detail. It's important. Nicholas McGee grabbed a kitchen knife, just a regular kitchen knife from his own drawer, and then he walked over to Kawsheen Gelzer, who was sleeping, face down, completely vulnerable, and he stabbed him in the back. Kawsheen jolted awake. Can you imagine? 1 second you're asleep, the next second there's a knife in your back and you're fighting for your life. The two men struggled. Kawsheen fought back hard enough that he actually knocked the knife out of Nicholas's hand. For a second he might have thought he had a chance, but Nicholas grabbed a hammer. He started slamming it into Kawsheen's head, over and over. And in the chaos, he was able to grab the knife again. Kawsheen tried to run. He was bleeding everywhere, disoriented, terrified. But he slipped in his own blood and crashed to the floor. And this is the part that haunts me. Lying there, dying, Kawsheen looked up at Nicholas and asked him, "Why are you doing this?" You know what Nicholas said? Because you're a piece of shit, smart mouth and I'm tired of you. And then he stabbed him in the chest, multiple times, until Kawsheen Gelzer was dead. But if you think that's where this story ends, we're just getting started. So now Nicholas has a dead body in his living room, blood everywhere. And instead of panicking, instead of calling the police, he searches Kawsheen's pockets. He finds drugs. He and Heather smoke them right there next to the body. Then Nicholas drags Kawsheen's corpse into the bathtub, just leaves it there to rot for several days. But then, and this is almost darkly comedic if it wasn't so horrifying, there's a leak from the apartment upstairs. The bathtub floods. Nicholas has to hide the decomposing body in another room while maintenance comes to fix it. Can you imagine being that maintenance worker? You're just there to fix a drain, and there's a dead body literally one room away. After the worker leaves, Nicholas drags the body back out, lays it on a blanket in the living room, and then he gets to work. Okay, this is where it gets truly disturbing. So if you're squeamish, maybe skip ahead 30 seconds. Nicholas McGee used a saw. Police think it was a Leatherman-like multi-tool, and he started cutting through Kawsheen's body, arms, legs, neck. He used a hammer to break the legs when the saw wasn't working. He put the body parts in black plastic garbage bags, stuffed the torso in a suitcase, and then he shoved everything, the arms, the legs, the head, the torso into his refrigerator and freezer. Then he taped the whole thing shut. And here's what gets me. According to his own confession later, he and Heather just tried to forget about it, like it was a bad memory they could push to the back of their minds. Meanwhile, Kawsheen Gelzer's severed head was sitting in their fridge, right next to whatever leftovers they had. Stay with me here, because we're about to jump forward almost 2 years. So it's now May 2022, a couple months after the murder. Kawsheen's mother reports him missing. She hasn't heard from her son, and she's worried. Police show up at the apartment, ask Nicholas and Heather if they've seen him, and they lie. They say, yeah, Kawsheen was here, he sold us drugs, and then he left. Haven't seen him since. The cops have no reason not to believe them. They leave. Meanwhile, Nicholas and Heather keep getting arrested for shoplifting. They're stealing stuff to sell so they can buy drugs. They miss court dates, get warrants, the usual cycle for people struggling with addiction. But the whole time, Kawsheen Gelzer's body is still in that fridge. Then in September 2023, Nicholas heads down to Chesapeake, Virginia, gets arrested for trying to get a bank statement in someone else's name. Identity fraud. He's sitting in jail in Virginia when everything finally catches up to him. January 20th, 2024, almost 2 years after the murder. Someone makes an anonymous call to 911. They say Heather Stines has a body in her refrigerator. Police show up at the apartment. Heather lets them in, and immediately officers notice something weird. There's this large tarp hanging from the kitchen door frame, like someone's trying to block off the kitchen. An officer walks over to the fridge, reaches for the handle, and Heather loses it. She becomes agitated, combative, trying to stop them. So the cops cuff her, take her to the living room. They open the fridge, and there it is, Kawsheen Gelzer's severed, decaying head. Staring back at them, they immediately seal the apartment, call in detectives and crime scene investigators, and when they search the rest of the fridge and freezer, they find the rest of him. Arms, legs, torso in a suitcase. All of it wrapped in black plastic bags, exactly how Nicholas had left it almost 2 years earlier. Heather is arrested on the spot, charged with concealment of a corpse. But what about Nicholas? Remember, Nicholas is locked up in Virginia, so on January 31st, 2024, NYPD detectives fly down to Chesapeake to interview him. Now here's where it gets wild. These detectives sit down with Nicholas, and he's not cooperating at first, but then they make him an offer. We'll give you a cigarette, and for a cigarette, just a cigarette, Nicholas McGee confesses to everything. He describes the murder in graphic detail, tells them how he stabbed Kawsheen while he was sleeping, how they fought, how he used the hammer, how Kawsheen's last words were asking him why. He tells them how he dismembered the body, how he and Heather tried to forget about it. But here's the part that shows you what kind of person Nicholas McGee really is. At one point during the confession, he says, "I don't feel bad at all. Like I should, but I don't. And later, sitting in court, he says, "The first one was easy. If I was out, I would probably have 2 or 3 more bodies. It was so easy." The first one, meaning he's already thinking about doing it again. Oh, and one more thing. After he killed Kawsheen, Nicholas got a tattoo on his arm. Want to guess what it was? A severed head and a kitchen knife. He commemorated the murder, like it was something to be proud of. Nicholas McGee was extradited back to New York in April 2024. He was walked out of the 67th precinct in cuffs, hand and feet. And you know what he did for the cameras? Stuck his tongue out. Like this was all a joke to him. He was charged with first-degree murder, robbery, concealment of a corpse, and tampering with evidence. In October 2024, a Brooklyn Supreme Court jury found him guilty of first-degree murder. And on November 19, 2025, just a couple days ago, Justice John Hecht sentenced Nicholas McGee to life in prison without the possibility of parole. He will die behind bars. As for Heather Stines, she pleaded guilty in October 2024 to concealment of a human corpse and bail jumping. She's awaiting sentencing. She's cooperating with prosecutors, but she's facing serious time too. Now let's talk about Kawsheen Gelzer for a minute, because in all of this horror, it's easy to forget that a real person died. Someone's son, someone's brother. Look, Kawsheen had a criminal record. He was a registered sex offender. He was involved in drugs. I'm not going to pretend he was a saint, but his brother spoke out after the body was discovered. He said Kawsheen was a very good person who had a family who always loved him and cared about him. The family said they hadn't seen him in about 3 years because he wanted to live his own life, but they'd filed a missing person report. They were looking for him. His brother also disputed the sex offender conviction, calling it false allegations. Whether you believe that or not, here's what we know for sure. Kawsheen Gelzer was killed in his sleep. He was brutally murdered, dismembered, and hidden in a fridge for nearly 2 years. Nobody deserves that. Nobody. And his family spent almost 2 years not knowing where he was, not knowing if he was alive or dead. Just wondering. When they finally got answers, those answers were worse than anything they could have imagined. Here's something that still bothers me about this case. Remember how I mentioned that neighbors told reporters everyone knew something deadly had happened in that apartment? They heard things. They saw things. Some even mentioned strange smells. But nobody called it in, not until that anonymous tip in January 2024. Now, I'm not trying to blame the neighbors here. Maybe they didn't want to get involved. Maybe they thought they were imagining things. Maybe they were scared. But Kawsheen Gelzer's body sat in that refrigerator for almost 2 years. And during that time, Nicholas and Heather were just living their lives, getting arrested for shoplifting, smoking drugs, acting like nothing happened. When police finally discovered the body, they had to bring in specialized crime scene investigators. The apartment was described as absolutely filthy. The decomposition was severe. It was a scene that even experienced detectives said they'd never forget. So let's talk about Nicholas McGee for a second. What kind of person does this? He didn't just kill Kawsheen in the heat of the moment, though that's bad enough. He waited for him to fall asleep. That's premeditation. Then after the murder, he dismembered the body, hid it, lied to police, kept living in that apartment with a corpse in his fridge for almost 2 years. And when he finally confessed, he said he didn't feel bad. He said it was easy. He said he'd probably do it again. This isn't just a crime of passion or a drug deal gone wrong. This is someone with a complete disregard for human life. The Brooklyn DA, Eric Gonzalez, said it best. The cruelty and disregard for human life shown in this case are almost beyond comprehension. Almost. Because unfortunately, people like Nicholas McGee do exist. You know what gets me about this case? It's not just the violence. It's not just the dismemberment or the head in the fridge. It's how long he got away with it. Almost 2 years. 22 months of living with a body in his apartment. 22 months of Kawsheen's family wondering where he was. 22 months of neighbors suspecting something but not acting. If not for that anonymous tip in January 2024, how much longer would it have gone on? Would Nicholas McGee have eventually killed again, like he said he would? We'll never know. What we do know is that Nicholas McGee will spend the rest of his life in prison. He'll never be free again. And honestly, that feels like the only appropriate ending to the story. Kawsheen Gelzer was 39 years old when he died. Whatever mistakes he made in his life, whatever his past was, he didn't deserve to be murdered in his sleep. He didn't deserve to be dismembered and forgotten in a refrigerator. His brother said it best, "My brother is in a better place now. That's the most important thing." This case is a reminder that sometimes the most horrific crimes happen in the most ordinary places. A regular apartment in Brooklyn, a regular Friday night, in a spiral of drugs, desperation, and violence that ended with one man dead and another spending life in prison. The apartment on Nostrand Avenue is still there. Life goes on in that building. New tenants probably live in that unit now, with no idea what happened there. But the story of what Nicholas McGee did will never be forgotten. This was the first reported homicide in Brooklyn's 67th precinct in 2024. But it wasn't the first act of violence in that apartment, and it won't be the last tragedy born from addiction and desperation. If you or someone you know is struggling with substance abuse, there are resources available. There's always another way out that doesn't end like this. Nicholas McGee is currently serving life without parole. Heather Stines is awaiting sentencing on her charges. Kawsheen Gelzer's family continues to mourn his loss. This has been the story of the Brooklyn refrigerator murder. Thanks for watching. And please, if you found this video informative, hit that like button and subscribe for more true crime content. Stay safe out there.